Truman Capote once said, "Venice is like eating an entire box of chocolate liqueurs all in one go." And there is no better way to describe Venice. It's decadent, it draws you in and leaves a lasting impression. The external beauty of the opulent palazzi that line the canals are matched only by their stunning interiors, with ceiling frescoes, intricate decorations, and lavish furniture. Then tucked away behind these impressive facades is a labyrinth network of calli, the local term for a typical narrow street that only exists here in Venice. Whether it's your first time visiting Venice or it has captivated you during the course of numerous trips, I'm going to show you another side to Venice. What you're going to see are truly once-in-a-lifetime experiences that you can only do here in Venice. I'll share with you fascinating details that go unseen and unique things to do in Venice that you remember for years to come. Pronti? Ready? Andiamo! Let's go! Ciao ciao, mi chiamo Michelle, sono la Intrepid Guide, la vostra guida per imparare l'italiano, per viaggiare o per entrare in contatto con le vostre origini italiane come me, attraverso il mio metodo originale 80-20. Hi, my name is Michelle, I'm the Intrepid Guide, your guide to learning Italian for travel or to connect with your Italian heritage like I did, all by using my unique 80-20 method. If you're new to my channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and click on the bell notification so you get an alert when I post more videos like this one. Now let's go and explore Venice. Andiamo, let's go! Located in a small, less travelled calle or street is Palazzo Contarini del Bovolo. Now it may not be located on the Grand Canal, but its position is still important, being equal distance from both the Rialto, the city's commercial hub, and Piazza San Marco, the political centre of the Republic. In the late 15th century, important renovations updated the complex, thanks to its new owner, Pietro Contarini, who bought the palace in 1489. The Contarini family owned the building throughout the 18th century. At the beginning of the 19th century, the property passed to Domenico Emery of Toulon, and it was at that stage that Arnaud Marseille, known as the Maltese, converted Palazzo Contarini into a lodging house. This palazzo is best known for its elegant 26-metre high cylindrical tower and spiral staircase that climbs the external wall. This is known as Scala Contarini del Bovolo. In the Venetian language, Bovolo means snail. The staircase leads to an arcade where you'll see an impressive view of the Venetian skyline, including St. Mark's Bell Tower, and on a clear day you can even see the Dolomites. During the time that it was a lodging house, one of its guests, German astronomer Wilhelm Tempel, discovered comet C1859 and the Merope Nebula of the Pleiades constellation from the top of this tower. To visit Scala Contarini del Bovolo, booking is essential as your entry is timed. To book your visit, I've included a link in the description below this video. Venice wouldn't be the same without its sleek, iconic black vessels that glide along its canals. Thanks to a small group of artisans, traditional boatyards called squeri in the plural keep this tradition alive. Lo Squero di San Trovaso is one of the two remaining traditional boatyards in Venice that meticulously build these simple yet elegant vessels. Two of the main things that define a traditional squero from a normal boatyard is there is a traditional mountain house made of wood, and the ground slopes down directly into the water where the gondolas are released. There's more to gondolas than meets the eye, but more on that in a moment. When Lo Squero di San Trovaso opened in the 17th century, more than 10,000 gondolas were in circulation in Venice, at which time this was the primary mode of transport, and during its peak there were around 60 boat builders who worked here. Today there are only around 500 gondoliers and 250 substitute gondoliers that still navigate these waters, which are mostly hired by tourists wanting to take a romantic cruise. Although you can also buy your own gondola for personal and private use, and you don't need a license to do so. Squero di San Trovaso makes one new boat each year, which costs upwards of 35,000 euros depending on its amenities. To make a gondola from scratch, it takes 3 full months. There is no manual for making a gondola. Every part of the process is made by height by an experienced craftsman. Measuring 11 meters long and weighing around 500 to 600 kilos, each gondola is made up of 280 pieces, 7 to 8 types of wood, 7 coats of paint, and can last for up to 50 years. 5 times a year, the bottom is cleaned to remove algae. Once a year, a new coat of paint is needed, and every 5 years, the bottom is completely replaced. Originally, gondolas were covered by a roof and privately owned by the wealthy. By having a roof, no one could see who was inside and what precious items were being transported. The forcala is quite a complicated object, which has developed throughout the centuries for pure functionality. There are around 40 different types of forcalas. Each forcala is unique since it is specifically designed for its gondolier, who is the rower of the gondola. The design is modified according to the gondolier's height and rowing needs. There is even a rule that specifies that the external gondolier's arm must not go above his chin. They say that this ornament on the front of a gondola's bow, called ferro della gondola, is a compact representation of the city of Venice itself. Its main purpose is to assist in collisions and create a counterbalance with the gondolier, so its weight will vary from gondola to gondola. However, there is a lovely story behind its design. The 6 sestieri, or neighbourhoods of Venice, are symbolically represented by the 6 forward-facing prongs. These are San Marco, Castello, Canareggio, San Polo, Santa Croce and Dorso Duro. And the island of Giudecca points backwards, as this is a more recent island that wasn't part of the Venetian Republic. Its large S shape resembles the curves of the Grand Canal, and the little arch at the top of the prong symbolises the Rialto Bridge. Then, reigning over all the 6 sestieri is the broadly curved top, which represents the Doge's cap, the headdress that was only worn by Venice's Duke or the Chief Magistrate, called the Doge. And if you want to see how a gondola is made, you can visit Lo Squero di San Trovaso. It's totally free, but booking is essential. I've provided a link in the description so you can do just that. Once you see how gondolas are made, why not try your hand at voga veneta, Venetian rowing? That is, rowing standing up and facing forward, a style that is native to Venice and made iconic by its gondoliers. This kind of rowing is made possible thanks to the forcala, an exquisitely carved oarlock made from either walnut or cherry wood that has an open cradle which supports the oar. While there are many strokes at the disposal of an accomplished vogatore, it is the shape of the forcala that allows for its execution, allowing the pompiere, the rower, to maneuver the craft through complex navigational situations that the intricate lattice work of Venetian waterways presents. To try your hand at rowing, Row Venice is a non-profit organisation of passionate women and expert vogatrici, that is, female Venetian rowers, who are dedicated to the preservation of the traditional Venetian cultura aquea, the aqueous culture. When I heard about Row Venice, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to book myself a rowing lesson along Canal Lasso, which is the ancient name for the Grand Canal where I'm standing now. Now, lasting approximately 90 minutes, my instructor Elena breaks down this unique rowing technique before you set off and navigate the quiet and snug canals that lead to the Grand Canal. It's a truly unique experience that is definitely one I would do again and highly recommend. To book your lesson, just use the link that I've shared below this video in the description. For a unique view of Venice's main thoroughfare, head up to the rooftop terrace at Fondaco dei Tedeschi. This historic building in Venice is situated on the Grand Canal, a few steps from the Rialto Bridge. It's the rooftop of this building here. Now, this building was once the headquarters and restricted living quarters of the city's German merchants. The word Fondaco comes from the Arabic word funduk, meaning storehouse or warehouse, and the word Tedeschi means Germans. Today, this building is a high-end department store selling luxury goods. Visiting the terrace is absolutely free, but booking is essential. It's open daily from 10:30 AM to 6:30 PM. To book your visit, use the link that I've provided below this video. For more inspiration on the best views in Venice, be sure to watch my guide to the best views and prettiest canals in Venice, which I've included a link to below this video in the description. So how was this floating city built in a marshy lagoon full of nothing but sand and silt? To make the islands of the Venetian lagoon habitable, early settlers drained the areas of the lagoon, dug canals and shored up banks so they could build a solid foundation. Once the canals were dug, they drove thousands of large, closely spaced wooden stakes or pilings through the water, sand and mud, where they finally rested on the harder clay beneath. Since there was no forest, all this wood was imported from Montenegro, Slovenia and Croatia. Many of these stakes were made from water-resistant alder wood. Then once all the stakes are levelled off in the ground, wooden platforms and then stone is placed on top. It's on top of this that the buildings of Venice are built. Still today, wooden pilings are used when maintenance work is carried out. This is because once the wood is submerged in almost zero oxygen conditions, the wood is not only preserved, but it petrifies into a stone-like state, thanks to the flow of mineral-rich water in the immediate vicinity. The depths of each canal varies, but most are only between 1.5 to 2 meters deep. The Grand Canal, which runs through the heart of Venice, is deepest still with an average of around 5 meters. Much deeper still is the Canale della Giudecca, which separates the main part of Venice from the island of Giudecca. This is around 12 meters to 17 meters deep. Venice really is a world unto its own, with its own language. Although it's often referred to as an Italian dialect, even by some of its speakers, Venetian really is a separate language with many local varieties. Venetian influenced not only standard Italian, but even English and other languages too. Words such as ciao, ghetto, carnival and quarantine all originated here in Venice and literally sailed around the world. To find out more about the history of the Venetian language, you can check out a separate video which I've made just about that, which I've linked to in the description below this video. Along with Genoa, Pisa and Amalfi, Venice was one of the 4 maritime republics whose merchants and fleets dominated the whole of the Mediterranean Sea. In fact, La Regata or Palio is an ancient rivalry between the 4 Italian maritime republics. But of all of these, the Republic of Venice was the largest and longest lasting. It expanded strongly onto the mainland too and became the most powerful state in Italy. That is until 1797, when Napoleon invaded the Venetian lagoon and conquered Venice. Venice kept its independence until the mid-1800s, when it was annexed to the Lombardo-Veneto kingdom by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Venice's origins date back to the 5th century, when the residents of the inland areas of Veneto sought refuge in the lagoon in order to escape barbarian invasions. Until the 8th century, the city was under Byzantine rule. Then subsequently controlled by an oligarchic government, it developed its wealth and influence until, in 1200, it reached the height of its power, dominating trade between the Mediterranean and the East. Keeping time for over 500 years is the beautiful 15th century Torre dell'Orologio, the clock tower, and its astronomical clock covered in gold leaf that tracks lunar phases. This monument is truly a masterpiece of technology and engineering. Located in St. Mark's Square, this clock tower plays a key role in the overall urban layout of the city and is an essential point of focus in Piazza San Marco. Located above a triumphal archway that leads to the Rialto Bridge, this monument marks the access to the city's main commercial artery, the Merceria, which means goods in Italian, because that's exactly where goods were sold. The clock tower, which you can see over my shoulder, was placed in this exact location because it is the only place in the square that can be seen from St. Mark's Basin. This way, incoming boats could see both the time and phases of the moon, so they could safely plan their sea voyages. What's interesting about this clock is that the digital numbers change in increments of 5 minutes, and also it doesn't ring at the top of the hour, but instead 2 minutes before and 2 minutes afterwards. This is to ensure that it doesn't compete with the attention of St. Mark's bell tower. Ringing the bell are the 2 hardest working men in Venice, who haven't moved from their posts since the clock was built. They are called the Mori, or the 2 Moors, and are named so because they are made of bronze, and over time their colour changes to a darker tone, but they actually have European faces. The entire structure works like clockwork, thanks to an impressive and complicated system of gear wheels located within a large cruciform metal framework at the centre of the tower. This tower is also where the clockkeeper and his family lived, the last one left in 1999, after which this role was replaced with an automatic system. On a more morbid note, when public executions took place between the 2 columns here in St. Mark's Square, atop of which is a statue of Theodore and the other one of the winged lion, the condemned were forced to face the clock tower. This is to ensure they would see the hour of their death. In fact, when someone, even a child, misbehaves or does something that they shouldn't be doing, there is a Venetian expression that says, "Ti faccio vedere io che ore sono," meaning "I'll show you what time it is." What many visitors to Venice don't know is that you can actually book a special guided tour so you can see the inner workings of this fabulous timepiece. But not only that, you get special access to the terrace and the rooftop, where you can get up close and personal with the 2 Moors. From there you'll see Venice from a truly unique perspective. A visit to the clock tower is included in the Venice Museum Pass for an additional fee, but you need to book well in advance. You can do this either online for an additional booking fee of €1 or by going directly to the Correr Museum, which is located at the opposite end of the piazza. No trip to Venice would be complete without exploring the Doge's palace, called Palazzo Ducale in Italian. As one of the city's major attractions, it'll always encourage large crowds and long queues to enter the palace. But skip the fuss and the stress and book yourself a private guided tour like I did. There's no better way to see the Doge's palace than through the eyes of a local who can bring to life the long history of this important building. Now, the Doge's palace was the seat of Venice's government for over 7 centuries. Now, this masterpiece of Gothic architecture has survived storms, crashes and conspiracies. It was only outdone by Casanova, the notorious seducer who escaped from the Attic prison. A Doge was an elected lord and head of state, but for all his importance, he lived like a prisoner in a gilded suite inside the palace, unable to leave without permission. Now, after fire gutted the original palace in 1577, Antonio da Ponte restored its Gothic grandeur. The white Istrian stone and Veronese pink marble palace caps a graceful colonnade with medieval capitals depicting key Venetian guilds. Don't be fooled by the lovely arcaded loggia, which runs along the piazzetta, the little square. It was between the 9th and 10th columns from the left that death sentences were read. The most spectacular areas of the Doge's palace are located on the top floor. Climb Sansovino's impressive 24-carat gold leaf stucco work staircase called Scala d'Oro, or the Golden Staircase, and you'll be led into rooms filled with gorgeous propaganda. When you enter the Sala delle Quattro Porte, or Hall of the Four Doors, designed by Palladio, take a moment to imagine the ambassadors and the ducal audiences who waited here under the lavish paintings of Venice's most talented artists, Giovanni Cambi, Titian and Tiepolo. Located in the colonnaded courtyard is the Scala dei Giganti, or the Staircase of the Giants, designed by Antonio Rizzo. Towering above at the top are 2 muscular statues of Apollo and Neptune by Sansovino. Perhaps the most important and epic room is the Sala del Maggior Consiglio, or Hall of the Grand Council. Now, it was here that all Venetian nobles gathered when they had to make important decisions, such as the election of a new Doge. Foreign guests were brought here, which is why the walls are covered with paintings representing great battles and victories of Venice. At 52.7 metres long and 24.66 metres wide and 11.5 metres high, the Sala del Maggior Consiglio is the largest in the Doge's palace, covering over 1,250 square metres. Located at the head of the room is where the Doge's throne once stood, behind which is one of the largest canvas paintings in the world, Il Paradiso, or Paradise, by Tintoretto. This painting stretches 22 by 7 metres and depicts Il Paradiso, meaning heaven or paradise, that is crammed with 500 prominent Venetians, including several patrons of Tintoretto. Now, the tour I took includes access to the famous Bridge of Sighs, or Ponte dei Sospiri. This enclosed white limestone bridge was built in 1600 and passes over the Rio di Palazzo to connect the new prison, or Prigioni Nuove, to the interrogation rooms of the Doge's palace. Now, here's a fun fact. It was designed by Antonio Contino, whose uncle Antonio da Ponte designed the Rialto Bridge. The English translation of the bridge was interpreted by Lord Byron in the 19th century. Now, he translated the name from Italian, Ponte dei Sospiri, and interpreted it to mean that it was the prisoners who would sigh at their final glimpse of the beautiful Venice through the bridge's windows before being taken down to their cells. However, in reality, days of inquisitions and executions were over by the time that the bridge was built, and the cells underneath the palace roof were occupied mostly by small-time criminals. In addition, little could be seen from inside the bridge due to the stone grills covering the windows. Also part of the tour is St. Mark's Basilica, or Basilica di San Marco. In the year 828, crafty Venetian merchants smuggled St. Mark's corpse out of Alexandria in Egypt in a barrel of pork fat to avoid inspection by Muslim authorities. Venice then built a basilica around its stolen saint. After the original St. Mark's was burned down during an uprising, Venice rebuilt the basilica 2 more times, misplacing and rediscovering the saint's body along the way. The current incarnation was completed in 1094, reflecting the city's cosmopolitan image with Byzantine domes, a Greek cross layout, and walls clad with marbles looted from Syria, Egypt, and Palestine. Unbelievably, this church was the Doge's private chapel. It only officially became Venice's cathedral in 1807, following the demise of the Republic, replacing the considerably less grand Basilica di San Pietro in Castello. The oldest mosaic on the facade, dating from 1270, is on the lunette above the far left portal, depicting St. Mark's stolen body arriving at the basilica. This theme is replicated in 3 of the other lunettes, including 1616 mosaics above the second portal from the right, showing turbaned officials recoiling from the hamper of pork fat containing the sainted corpse. Just inside the vestibule are the basilica's oldest mosaics, with apostles with the Madonna standing sentry by the main door for more than 950 years. The cupola of the prophets is best seen from behind the main altar, which houses the simple sarcophagus containing St. Mark's body. But the main reason visitors pay €2 extra to enter this space is to see the stupendous Pala d'Oro, a gold altarpiece studded with 2,000 emeralds, amethysts, sapphires, rubies, pearls, and other gemstones. Last but not least is access to the Basilica's terrace, which gives you stunning panoramic views over Venice and St. Mark's Square. To book the same private tour I did, I've provided a link in the description below. Are you planning a trip to Italy? Don't be treated like a tourist. Brush up on the basics of Italian with my self-paced online video course, Intrepid Italian for Travel. In just 2 weeks, I'll help you become conversational in Italian so you can create lifelong memories as you mingle with the locals and get local tips. Avoid tourist traps and make new friends. For more details, click on the link in the description below this video. No matter what time of year you visit Venice, you'll see countless Venetian masks like this one on display in shop windows. Now, these were and still are primarily worn during one of Italy's biggest events, Carnival or Carnevale. The term carnival or carnevale in Italian derives from the Latin carnem levare, literally to eliminate meat, or carne vale, farewell to meat. Both refer to the giving up of meat and all bodily pleasures. This is celebrated with a great banquet on Shrove Tuesday, the day before Lent, when a period of abstinence and fasting begins. During Carnevale, the wearing of masks like this one and costumes guaranteed total anonymity. Now, this created a sort of cancellation of social divisions and a way to hide differences between noble people and peasants. Incidentally, this is also how we get the verb incarnate, in Italian incarnare, literally to embody the spirit of another. When we escape our reality and slip on a mask and costume, we are actually incarnating another person. To really appreciate this art form and the patience and mastery required to make the perfect mask, I joined a mask making workshop with a master artisan to learn about the history of this ancient tradition. You can choose from a production class or a decoration class, or do both. In the production class, you learn how to make your own paper mache mask, and in the decoration class, you get to paint and use materials to decorate it. No matter which option you choose, you get to take home your creation like I did. Now, to join the same workshop I did where I made this mask, just use the link that I've shared below in the description. Now, to learn more about Carnevale itself, make sure you watch my video, which includes everything you need to know about the history of Carnival, the events, and the story behind its traditional masks. I've shared a link to this video in the description below this one. Buongiorno, Signora Maschera. Hello, Mrs. Mask. Now, this is how people addressed each other during the golden era of Carnival, and still today. The reason being is that you can't recognize the other person, nor their gender, so everyone just calls you Mrs. Mask. With your own Venetian mask that you made during your workshop, or one that's a bit more elaborate, crafted by a local artisan, there is no better way to experience Venice than to get into the Carnival spirit and by going to a masquerade ball. Carnival is hosted each year in February leading up to Lent, and there is a Venetian proverb that says "Chi non le fa de Carnival le fa le Quaresima," meaning those who don't do crazy things during Carnival do them during Lent. To celebrate Carnival in style, you can attend masquerade balls like Il Gran Ballo Mascheranda, which takes place in a stunning 18th century palace located on the Grand Canal and hosted by none other than Casanova. For more details or to reserve your ticket and costume hire, I've provided a link in the description below this video. Explore the world's first ghetto with a local. Venice is divided into 6 neighborhoods called sestieri. This term comes from the Italian word for sixth, which is sesto. A sestieri is the same as a quarter in any other European city, that is, 1/4 of a Roman encampment. Located in the North Island of the sestieri, which is the singular form of sestieri, is Cannaregio, and it is here that the world saw its first ghetto. I highly encourage you to take a dedicated walking tour of this one area alone, which is led by one of its locals, Lucia. To book the same tour I did, I've provided a link in the description below this video. There is so much history in this one sestiere alone that I recommend you join this tour, then spend the rest of your day wandering around to let it all sink in. There are several reasons why this area is so important. First, the term ghetto originated here from the Venetian term for foundry. During the 1500s, there were copper foundries in the area called getto. In Italian, it's called gettata, which cast molten metal. At the time, the Cannaregio Canal was the main entry point into the heart of Venice. As the main thoroughfare, the area grew to form a population primarily made up of working class housing and manufacturing. From 1516, the Jewish community were obliged to live in a confined area of the city and wear a sign of identification. This was done in exchange for which the Jewish community was granted the freedom to practice their faith and receive protection from enemies elsewhere in Europe. The first Jews to observe this law in Venice were the Ashkenazim from Mid-Eastern Europe. With the combination of their guttural pronunciation, the Venetian term ghetto formed the word ghetto. This is a term we still use today and also to refer to this part of Venice. This ghetto was enclosed by guarded gates and no one was allowed to leave from sunset to dawn. To enforce this, the surrounding canals were patrolled by boats of the Christian Guard, who discouraged violations. This is how Europe's first ghetto was born. During this time, however, Jews held successful positions in Venice, such as physicians, moneylenders and merchants, and were allowed to leave the confines of the ghetto from early morning till sunset. These restrictions on the Jewish community remained in place for some 270 years, until Napoleon Bonaparte conquered the Venetian Republic in 1797. Napoleon put an end to the Jewish segregation and gave them equal rights and the choice to live in any part of the city of their choosing. Then, during the 16th century, the term ghetto spread throughout Europe and began to refer to the tragic episodes of racism during the Second World War as seen in the early 1900s. Today, the Jewish ghetto in Venice is a lively and popular district of the city, where the religious and administrative institutions of the Jewish community and its 5 synagogues still persist. Called Scole, there are 5 synagogues located here that were established between the early 16th and mid-17th centuries. Each synagogue represents a different ethnic group that sought refuge here in exchange for religious freedom. These include the German, Canton, Italian, Levantine and Spanish Scole. What's interesting is that from the outside, you wouldn't know that there was a synagogue inside. This sadly was due to the fact that these religious buildings weren't allowed to stand out or be obvious to any non-Jewish person visiting the area. They had to be discreet. To visit inside, you must book a private tour which includes the Spanish synagogue and the Kohanim Midrash. Bookings can be made through the Jewish Museum of Venice. One more interesting tidbit is that the world's first lending bank is located here. What not many people know is that the Jews were essentially forced to be moneylenders because since the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church considered lending money and earning interest to be sinful. Here in the world's first ghetto, there were 3 stalls where you could pledge an object in exchange for a cash loan. These 3 banks, red, green and black, survived until the end of the Republic in 1797. Fortunately, today you can still see one of these, Banco Rosso, the red bank. Its name derives from the red receipt that customers received when they received a loan. It is widely believed that the banking term to be in the red derives from this ancient Venetian bank. Jewish moneylenders are documented in Venice as early as the 14th century, but their regulation took place in the 1500s when the Ghetto was established. The state itself encouraged the activity of these banks in order to have fewer poor people to care for. Like I said, there's a lot to see and learn in just this one area alone. So to experience it properly, I recommend that you join the same tour I did, and I've linked to that in the description below this video. Campo dei Mori is a square named after 3 statues set in ancient walls that surround the area. The 3 statues represent 3 Oriental men, or Moors, who were brothers. Named Rioba, Sandi and Afani, they were part of the Mastelli del Cammello family who built the entire area. The 4th man stands a bit apart from the others on the quay. Now the 3 brothers were called Mastelli, meaning bucket or tub, because they had thousands of tubs of gold coins. Now of the 3 statues, the most famous of that is Suor Antonio Rioba, one behind me. In the 19th century, the statue lost its nose and it was replaced by a piece of iron. From then on, a legend grew that rubbing his nose would bring good luck. According to another legend, one of the brothers' activities was in banking, where he was said to have defrauded a devout Venetian woman. She then prayed to Santa Maria Maddalena to curse the 3 merchants, and as a result, the Mastelli brothers turned into stone statues that you see today, as a warning to anyone who saw them. A short distance away is a bas-relief on the facade of the Palazzo Mastelli on the Rio della Madonna dell'Orto. This shows a turbaned man wearing oriental clothing and leading a camel, which refers to the family's spice trade. Also located here on the quay at the foot of the bridge is a large 15th century pink Gothic house that was the home of the painter Tintoretto. This one right here. Jacopo Robusti, known as Tintoretto, was born here in 1518. Tintoretto's father, Battista Robusti, was a fabric dyer. Now, it was from his profession that he derived the nickname with which the artist became famous all over the world. Now, the verb tintare means to tint or to dye in Italian. The house was given to Tintoretto by his father-in-law Marco Vescovi, and the painter lived here until his death in 1594. Now, there is a plaque on the building which says, and I'll translate, now, "Do not ignore, hiker, the ancient house of Jacopo Robusti, called Il Tintoretto. From here, for everywhere, diffused countless paintings, publicly and privately, mirable, masterly, made with fine ingenuity by his brush. You will please learn this for the solace of the current owner." 1842. Located just a few steps away from Campo dei Mori and the Casa of Tintoretto, the House of Tintoretto, is Chiesa della Madonna dell'Orto. This church was founded in 1350 by the Order of Umiliati, and it is dedicated to God, the Virgin Mary and St. Christopher, protector of travellers and ferry sailors. Its name literally translates to Church of the Madonna in the Vegetable Garden, which was inspired by a miracle statue of a Madonna found in a nearby vegetable garden, which belonged to Giovanni de Santi, who left the statue there. The statue caught attention of the citizens when the artist's bride saw some weird flashes coming from the statue itself, and it became a cult object that forced the church to buy the statue. De Santi was given the right to be buried in front of the statue wherever they placed it, as well as being paid 150 ducati, which was a huge sum for the time. The church is one of the most beautiful examples of Gothic architecture in Venice. The facade and the cloister was made between 1460 and 1464. There are 3 main reasons to visit this church. First, in the front of the church, in the large square, is the only place in Venice where you can see the original brick pavement that once lined all the streets in Venice. Secondly, inside the church are 10 huge paintings by famous Venetian painter Tintoretto, who lived and worked very close by. These include the Presentation of Virgin at Temple, The Last Judgment, and the Beheading of St. Paul. Last but not least, Tintoretto himself is buried here alongside his 10 pieces of artwork. Entrance to the church is by donation, which is €3, and it's definitely worth it. Palazzo Grimani is a state museum that houses one of the most enchanting rooms in Venice. The original medieval building was built at the confluence of the canals of San Severo and Santa Maria Formosa, and purchased later by Antonio Grimani, who became a Doge in 1521. In the 3rd decade of the 16th century, this was his legacy, and it was subsequently passed on to his 2 grandsons, Vittore Grimani and Giovanni Grimani. While there are several rooms of interest, the Tribuna, also known as the Antiquarium, is home to over 100 ancient sculptures and busts, making it the most beautiful of them all. This incredible space is illuminated only from above and inspired by the Pantheon in Rome. Hanging in the centre of the room is a Roman replica of a late Hellenistic model of the abduction of Ganymede. Imagine sleeping in a lavish palace with frescoed walls and ceilings, where every room tells a unique and special story and every ornament and piece of furniture is designed by a local artisan. Well, that's exactly what staying at Ca' Bonfadini Historic Experience feels like. This isn't just a 5-star hotel, this is a museum that invites you to explore every corner of every room. Set over 3 floors, the building dates back to 1661 and was owned by the noble Bonfadini family. Later, when the Serenissima, aka the Venetian Republic, fell in 1797, the Bonfadini family left and moved to the mainland. It was then that the palace was subdivided and part of it was occupied by the Vivante family. It wasn't until 1815 that they then bought the entire building and developed and enriched it with stunning frescoes that you can still see today. Each room is unique and has a story to tell. For example, I'm staying in the Camera degli Sposi, which translates to the newlyweds room. This was where Pietro Bonfadini stayed with his newly wedded wife, Orsetta Giovanelli. What is now the lounge room was the groom's bedroom, and the second room was the bride's room. Notice the difference in the frescoes between these 2 rooms. The groom's room is filled with images of Roman monuments representing strength and vitality, while the bride's room features more romantic images. On the ceiling there are 4 well wishes written in French, considered the language of love, that are dedicated to the newly wedded. They read, "Never one without the other, near and far, the peace of the heart, and always." Now, when I say that no detail goes overlooked, here is just one example. The on-site restaurant is called Damma, which translates to dame or lady, a name chosen after the dames who came here, and also in honour of the city of Venice itself, who has always been considered as female. The tables in the restaurant have been beautifully reimagined using the same wood to create the briccole, that is, the wooden poles you see planted in the Venetian lagoon that protrude from the water. These indicate the navigable routes and canals and serve as mooring. But not just that, the first briccola to be installed in Venice was actually called Damma, so you see that the story comes full circle. It's these details and historic references that make your stay at Ca' Bonfadini truly special and unforgettable. If you're curious to know more about the building's history, including that of your own room, don't hesitate to ask the very friendly and accommodating staff. I received a lovely tour from both Carmela and Veronica upon arrival, which really set the tone for my wonderful stay here. And for each day that you stay here, each morning you'll kick off with an incredible breakfast spread. You can choose from an Italian style or an international menu, plus a main course. Trust me, you won't want to sleep in for this. For more details and to book your stay, I've provided a link in the description below this video. But before we move on, did you know that Ca, as in Ca' Bonfadini, is actually an abbreviation of casa, meaning house or home? This is a term that Venetians used to refer to houses, especially those of noble families. Other examples include Ca' Foscari, one of the lagoon universities, and Ca' Rezzonico, which is now a museum dedicated to 18th century Venice. Located in the northern end of the Venetian lagoon is the cheerfully colourful island of Burano. Many people visit Burano on a day trip from Venice, but there's so much more to enjoy and discover on this famous vibrant cluster of tiny islands, which is why I've created a dedicated video about Burano and how to best experience it. For more details, I've shared a link to that video in the description below this one. An island that doesn't get nearly enough attention is Torcello. Today only 8 people live on Torcello, which is located in the northern end of the Venetian lagoon near Burano, where I'm standing now. But it was here that the history of Venice all began. Torcello was first settled in the year 452 and is considered to be the parent island from which Venice was eventually populated. After the downfall of the Western Roman Empire, Torcello was one of the first lagoon islands to be successfully populated by the Veneti, who fled the terraferma, the mainland, to take shelter from the reoccurring barbarian invasions, especially after Attila the Hun had destroyed the city of Altinum and all of the surrounding settlements in 452. Altinum was the ancient town of the Veneti, 15 kilometers southeast of modern Treviso, close to the mainland shore of the lagoon of Venice. Torcello grew rapidly in importance as a political and trading centre. By the 10th century, it had a population of approximately 25,000 people and an impressive basilica, which as you can see behind me, to host them. In pre-medieval times, Torcello was a much more powerful trading centre than Venice. Thanks to the lagoon's salt marshes, the salines became Torcello's economic backbone, and its harbour quickly developed into an important re-export market in the profitable east-west trade, which was largely controlled by the Byzantium during that period. After a series of outbreaks of the plague, a further serious issue for Torcello, specifically that was the swamp area of the lagoon around the island, increased by the 14th century, partly because of the lowering of the land level. Navigation in that Laguna Morta, or the Dead Lagoon, was impossible, and before long traders ceased calling in the island. Now today, Torcello now has a full-time population of around 8 people, including the parish priest. Founded in 639, Basilica di Santa Maria Assunta is the lagoon's oldest Byzantine basilica. The most important artistic element and the main reason to visit the island and this cathedral is to see the mosaics inside, which are the earliest remaining mosaics in the Venetian lagoon. Not to be missed is the mosaic of the Last Judgment found on the entrance wall of the church. One particular section of this immense and apocalyptic depiction actually inspired Dante Alighieri, the father of the Italian language, who wrote La Divina Commedia, or the Divine Comedy, almost a century later. In the subdivision of penalties which Dante includes in the Divine Comedy, there are 7 compartments with a condemned soul for each of the 7 deadly sins. These correspond to the circles in the Divine Comedy. Photos and videos are strictly prohibited inside the church, so I can't show you the mosaic itself, but I did get this postcard to show you of what awaits. Trust me, it's worth the 5-minute vaporetto from Burano Island to Torcello. Now you can also head to the top of the bell tower for an incredible view over the lagoon. Highly recommend it. Other attractions here include the Torcello Museum, an 11th and 12th century church, Santa Fosca, in the form of a Greek cross, which is surrounded by a semi-octagonal porticus. Located in front of both churches is Attila's throne, which is an ancient stone chair. It has, however, nothing to do with the king of the Huns, as it was put in place here 100 years after his death. Multiple local legends surround the throne's history and legacy, the most notable being one who sits on the throne will return to Torcello. Another popular legend is that Attila himself used the throne, although this is disputed. The throne was most likely the seat of power for the Magister Militum, the governor of the island. One of the 2 bridges of Torcello is Ponte del Diavolo, or the Devil's Bridge, that crosses the Maggiore Canal, the waterway that connects the historical centre of Torcello with the lagoon. It dates back to the 15th century, but recent archaeological investigations have established that its foundations are grafted into pre-existing foundations from the 13th century. The main feature of the Devil's Bridge is its shape without railings, typical of the Venetian ancient bridges. Together with the Ponte Chiodo, or the Nails Bridge in Cannaregio in Venice, these are the only 2 bridges in the lagoon that preserve their ancient form. The origin of the name is uncertain. Some say that Diavoli, devils, was the nickname of a local family who gave the bridge its name. Others say the name comes from a legend about a Venetian girl, a witch, and an Austrian soldier. Murano is a series of islands linked by bridges in the Venetian lagoon. It lies about 1.5 kilometers or 1 mile north of Venice. Now, Murano's reputation as a center of glassmaking was born when the Venetian Republic, fearing fire and the destruction of this city's mostly wooden buildings, ordered glassmakers to move their furnaces to Murano in 1291. Murano glass is still associated with Venetian glass. In 1291, all the glassmakers in Venice were required to move to Murano. In the following century, exports began, and the island became famous, initially for glass beads and mirrors. Now, Aventurine glass was invented on the island, and for a while Murano was the main producer of glass in Europe. Now, the island later became known for chandeliers, and although decline set in during the 18th century, glassmaking is still the island's main industry. During its peak, Murano's glassmakers were soon numbered among the island's most prominent citizens. By the 14th century, glassmakers were allowed to wear swords, enjoyed immunity from prosecution by the Venetian state, and were able to marry their daughters into Venice's most affluent families. While benefiting from certain statutory privileges, glassmakers were forbidden to leave the Republic. However, many of them took the risk associated with migration and established glass furnaces in surrounding cities and further afield, sometimes in England and the Netherlands. Murano's glassmakers held a monopoly on high-quality glassmaking for centuries, developing or refining many technologies, including optically clear glass, enameled glass called smalto, glass with threads of gold called aventurine, multicolored glass called millefiori, milk glass called l'attimo, and imitation gemstones made of glass. Today, the artisans of Murano still employ these centuries-old techniques, crafting everything from contemporary art glass and glass jewelry to Murano glass chandeliers and wine stoppers. And when you watch a demonstration of how glass is manipulated to form these elegant objects, the craftsmen make it look so easy. Now, a better way to really appreciate what's involved is by getting hands-on experience, which is exactly what I did. I joined a workshop where I got one-to-one guidance in a private glassmaking session. During this 90-minute workshop with one of the most renowned craftsmen of Venice, I learned the secrets of Murano glassmaking techniques. What's more, I created a little memento that I can now take home and remember my experience by. To do the same workshop that I did, check out the link that I've shared in the description below this video. Located on the island of Murano is the Church of Santa Maria and San Donato. Now, the original church was dedicated to the Virgin Mary in the 7th century and founded by the Muriani and Muraneschi families who settled on Murano from mainland Altino. The church you see today was completely rebuilt between 1125 and 1140 in the Veneto Byzantine style. Now, at the time, it received precious relics of the dragon-slaying bishop Saint Donatus of Arezzo, which are behind the altar. What makes this church unique is its colourful and impressive 12th century floor mosaics that were laid at the same time as those in St. Peter's Basilica. Now, there are two kinds of mosaics here, the tessellatum and sectile. Now, those in the tessellatum style are formed by little squares that create figures and symbolic elements of human vices and virtues, while those in the sectile style appear as little marble slabs cut in geometric shapes that are used to create abstract representations of the highest religious symbolism. A month here in Venice creating this and other travel videos and Italian lessons, and during my time here I've stayed in various locations and establishments and on different islands, including Murano and Burano, and I chose them based on a variety of factors including their convenience, location, view as you see here, and history. Now, for details on each of the places I stayed in and would happily recommend to you, I provided all the links and details in the description below this video. Allora, eccoci qua. So there we have it, a guide of unique things to do, see and experience in Venice. Which one of these did you enjoy the most? Do you have any questions? Let me know in the comments below. For more details about any of the tours and experiences I booked, I've shared all the details in the description below this video, including all the links. Are you planning your dream trip to Italy? Are you worried about being tongue-tied or ending up in a tourist trap? Don't be treated like a tourist, be an insider. Learn to speak Italian before your trip without months of frustrating study. Now you can learn Italian with my unique 80-20 method. Don't just plan a trip going from one place to the next. Instead, plan to create lifelong memories as you mingle with the locals, get local tips, avoid tourist traps, and make new friends. Join Intrepid Italian for travel and learn conversational Italian in as little as 2 weeks before your trip. Go from clueless to confident with my course, and I'll help you to avoid tourist traps in Italy so you can make real connections with the locals that will enrich your travels. Imagine what it would feel like to be able to introduce yourself when you arrive at your accommodation, or getting a bargain at the market because you asked for a discount, or asking a local for a restaurant recommendation and being able to understand them when they give you directions in case you get lost. You'll be able to do all of this and more. Register now for lifetime access so you can learn anywhere, anytime and on any device. For more details, just click on the link in the description below this video. Ci vediamo lì. See you there. In the meantime, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel and turn on those notifications so you get an alert when I post more videos like this one. Until next time, thanks for watching and happy language learning, and buon viaggio! Un abbraccio! Ciao!